Hey, look how long the stash is getting. It's kind of ridiculous. Anyway, hello, welcome to another edition of the KokoPods. Another friend, Alyce Burton, a great one. Once again, she's just started a course in Neuroaesthetics, which basically we just talk about. Also, it's her birthday today, so happy birthday, Alyce. I've definitely told you happy birthday already, but you know how it is. We're getting older and wiser, I hope. I'm going to get straight into it. This is bit more of a shorter one. I think it was a bit more concentrated. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I hope it brings some joy into your life. And once again, it feels a bit weird saying this, but just whenever you can, rate the podcast, like, dislike, whatever, comment, on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you're listening to it. Apple Music, I think it's on Apple. But yeah, apart from that, enjoy the podcast. Hope you have a blessed day. And I will be speaking to you. Well, I'm speaking to you right now, I guess. So you're already listening. Welcome to the show, Alyce Burton.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Yeah, good, man. This is weird.
This is weird. It always feels a bit surreal the first few minutes.
It's strange because, I feel like we've been doing a podcast for the last 20 minutes, and now it's like, oh, now we're doing the podcast.
Now we're doing the podcast.
We'll have to just regurgitate all the interesting stuff.
Yeah. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, you need to finish that point about what you were just telling me about Genesis? Oh, no.
Psychogenesis.
Psychogenesis.
Oh, psychogenesis. Well, it's not even I wasn't... I basically, it's a term that I literally found out about maybe like a week or two ago. I was just researching shit on the interwebs. And it basically just stemmed from a lot of modern day culture on how people basically self-manifest illnesses, let's say. They can be not necessarily just illnesses, but like ideas that can manifest themselves in your body. Like, for example, I've been recently I joined a Reddit sub on incels.
Okay.
Yeah.
You joined it. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What, just to do reconnaissance? Reconnaissance?
What do you mean?
Just
I'm just intrigued. Yeah, it's called.
What are these guys doing?
Well, actual insults, like subreddits and stuff, are quite hard to find, and actual communities are quite hard to find. But this one is it's called Incels Exit. So people that are trying to get out of that mindset or whatever.
Yeah, because it's a fucking scary issue, this incel thing.
Yeah, it's really scary, and people within it are just it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy type of thing where they all feed each other these things.
Yeah, echo chamber.
It's like an echo chamber that just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So this subreddit is like a place where people can sort of vent out a bit and how angry they are at this community, where they've basically been brainwashed by it and stuff. But yeah, this term psychogenesis came up when I was looking at that, when I was looking at a lot of basically a lot of young people when in today's society, they struggle with identity and so and so. So they find communities on the internet where they identify with, and there's the whole the the sort of insanity with pronouns in its most extremes. I'm not talking about if someone identifies as they them. That's not what I'm talking about. It's when it gets
I identify as it.
Alien, pansexual, blah 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 blah. It's 10 terms,
yeah.
and then my new pronouns, and then it's another 10 terms. And it's just this is not achieving anything. It's just people making stuff up. That's not. So this term psychogenesis kept coming up when people that were looking at certain communities, they kept using this term to sort of basically describe what it is, because at its core, it's essentially the same thing, where ideas get fed, or these ideas get popularized and they manifest themselves in almost like a physical form. Like I was telling you before, like mass hysteria and stuff. Like you gave the example of the witches when people think there's like witches and witchcraft happening back in like Victorian, like medieval ages.
Yeah, like 1600s, I feel.
Wherever, yeah. When there's like, when they think there's a witch around that they believe is doing bad things to the community, then the community manifests the badness within them. So they believe that they're ill, so then they actually get ill from it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a term for like manifesting.
I guess so, yeah, I guess so.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I feel like quite base level on it, so I don't want to talk
You're
about
not 100% sure what it means.
Yeah, exactly.
This, maybe not.
Yeah, but like I was telling you, the interesting modern example of it was like the Tourette's thing and the tics, where basically, I guess like medical research has shown that like there's been a massive increase in like Tourette's within like a certain age group that like watches lots of like TikTokers and stuff that watch people with actual Tourette's that ends up sort of manifesting into them.
They kind of just affect it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. But anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Interesting though. Never heard of that before.
Yeah. I hadn't either up until like literally like a week or two ago. But that's that. I read your essay actually.
Oh, you actually did?
This morning. This morning. Yeah. It was a nice introduction to neuroaesthetics.
Aesthetics.
Yeah.
Well, like one branch. Yeah, that was like the first term essay.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Yeah, it was good. It was a nice like I said, it was it didn't necessarily like, it wasn't specifically about like it was like a general essay, which was nice, because if it was too specific, I probably wouldn't have like got much out of it. But yeah, just I guess like the study of like how people experience things. It's great.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. How did you end up finding about it initially?
The course.
Well, actually, a bit of backstory. You're doing a course now.
Yeah. So
is it a master's?
Yep, master's.
Bring the mic a little bit closer. That's fine.
Yeah. So doing it keeps moving. Doing a master's in the psychology of art, neuroaesthetics, and creativity, which is just like such a mouthful. But I think they literally did that on purpose for search engine optimization. Just so it's like you can type in aesthetics or neuroaesthetics or creativity and you'll find the course. But it's really fucking cool. I think I was just I can't remember why I was looking at masters. I was just, I think, in a bit of a rut. I was like, right, cool, what am I doing with my life? And it was just on the Goldsmiths website and I saw it and I was like, what the fuck? I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, that's it. I want to do that. And then applied.
Nice.
Got in.
You got in, yeah. And now you're studying.
With an arts background as well. So like.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but fucking it's a lot of science. I was not prepared.
You're not expected the science bit of it.
No, with like an undergrad in photography and I get there and it's like statistics and neuroscience and I'm like, whoa.
Whoa, yeah.
That's a lot. My brain has just like been cracked open and poured, just everything's been poured in.
Yeah.
But I didn't fail my stats coursework either. I thought that was going to happen.
You didn't? Well done.
I actually got, decent mark. Multiple regression.
I don't know what that means.
Hierarchical multiple regressions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. How does it feel being back in uni after not being in uni for like so long?
I can't describe, just so lush. Just feels like, that fits.
Does it feel nice like having a structure and like a structure where people give you stuff to study and then also the things that you've been given you're interested in as well? Yeah. I think that's...
Well, it's a lot of like, you kind of have the reading list and then you also just have like access to all of these medical journals and these psychology journals, which like I think they cost like hundreds of pounds a year for one, and we've got access to them all. So I'm just like typing in like keywords on the library internet search and just like finding these like incredible studies that I'm just like, fuck, that's so cool.
Yeah, sick.
And it's just like, it's kind of devastating that knowledge is just like so locked off from everybody. Because like I'm learning so much just by like finding something that I'm interested in and reading about it. But it's like, if everybody had access to like all of this information, we'd just have like so much more of like an engaged, interested.
Yeah.
It's like
maybe, but people don't look out for that stuff anyway. You know what I mean? It has to be.
Well, they would if they could, but if they can't, then they can't.
Yeah, but also it has to be. Do you know what I mean? People don't just look out for stuff as much, like especially on the internet. You get given stuff. You know what I mean? You get given stuff, and whatever comes up on your algorithm is normally what you look at. Because there's a lot of like interesting websites and journals and great like places where you can get great information from, but people necessarily don't do it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I think people seek out, like, there's a lot of shit you can do on the internet.
Oh no, of course,
there's also, like, so much interesting stuff you can.
Yeah. I mean, we've sort of been cursed as a society with it's either adverts or a paywall. You know what I mean? And we're so used to the advert way of living.
I'm just so not used to it. Like, I find it so jarring, especially now because we've got YouTube on our telly. So it's like I've not got ad block on the telly, and it's like cool, two back-to-back adverts that are like 13 seconds long before you can skip. It's just like everywhere you go, all over the internet and all over like real life, you're just constantly advertised to, and none of what they're advertising is any good for you. I was thinking, like, if we could reclaim advertising space and use it in like the public good, how much of a better society we could have. Yes,
but you got to remember, it's
there ain't no money in that.
Exactly. Yeah, it has to be profitable for it to make sense. And then, like, some adverts are good. You know, like like there's a bit of a new age way of advertising where it makes sense. Like for example, I love advertising in podcasts. Like a lot.
Really, it really winds me up, especially if I like pay a subscription to Spotify and there's adverts in it. I'm like, I literally pay.
No, I'm not talking about if there's like like for example, like Tim Ferriss or whatever. Or like whatever, just like one of the big podcasters where they generally like a product. So it ends up being like a thing where, okay, I actually really like this product and I'm not going to advertise anything randomly.
Yeah, when people do it like authentically, fair enough. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, actually I fucking love... Do you listen to Duncan Trussell's podcast?
Mm-mm.
His adverts are so funny because he just goes like all out on like making them as entertaining as possible. It's like the first 10 minutes, but like that they are the adverts that I can really get on board
he's so
with.
Funny, man.
I love his podcast so much.
I think I listened to like one or two, but again, I really like them both. It's one of the things I just know I haven't really pursued, but I have enjoyed.
There's a lot of podcasts.
Yeah. And I really the podcasts with him and Joe are so funny. They're so funny.
Because they're such good friends, but they're so different, which I just love seeing. You know, two friends are like, there's so much love there, but then they're both just such wildly different characters.
Yeah, big time.
Interested in, like, I love when he's talking about like ceremonial magic, and Joe's like, they're like, okay,
yeah,
never do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like them ones a lot.
That is funny. Just back to the subject of neuroaesthetics.
Yeah, neuroaesthetics.
Can you just like sum it up?
Yeah, okay. So it's like the study of what the brain is doing when it's like perceiving beautiful things, or like we kind of look specifically at like the arts. So like we'll study like what the brain is doing when it's like viewing dance versus what it's doing when it's viewing like a painting or even just like a really beautiful view. So like aesthetics is really hard to define because it's kind of anything beautiful. But like this is the problem, is that you can't really easily define just what aesthetics are, and then kind of sometimes you're looking at just art, and then with science you're looking at something really tiny because you want to like reduce it as much as possible to find out what is happening and what's making that happen. But then also we're studying creativity as well, so what's happening in the brain when people are being creative, which is also interesting because creativity is another one that's actually really hard to define scientifically. Like they don't 100% know. It's like, yeah, it's not easy to put it in a box, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess because so much of it like like what's beautiful, you know, it's so subjective to people, you know, like in your essay, you were talking about how obviously there's the stuff that's, you know, quite obviously beautiful that leaves you in awe, you know, and then like I don't know, like an amazing fireworks show, or like an amazing ballet, or like, I don't know, something like very theatrical. But then like something really simple, just like walking down, you see like a freshly cut grass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like a mushroom growing, or like a nice flower, or just some nice textures on a wall. You know, and you're like, wow, like that's actually like well nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting as well, because I'm really intrigued by who's doing that and who's not doing that. Because like some people are very, like I'm set up very aesthetically sensory. Like I go out in the street and like I'm stopping everywhere to take pictures. I'm just like, wow, that looks cool. Or look at that bit of moss. Or like, wow, look at that cloud. And like, you kind of can't go on a walk with me without me being like, ooh, 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 look at all this lush stuff. And then some people literally walk down the street and not see anything. So I'm kind of intrigued about what makes different people more kind of aesthetically tuned in.
Because you talked about like in terms of like the whole, you know, describing personalities and how openness to experience. To experience is one of the big ones. Do you think openness with experience, like I think that's such a big factor on how like obviously people perceive their day-to-day things. And I think openness to experience, yes, it's a personality trait, but I think it's also it's a matter of like, I think it changes on day to day based on like current events in your life. You know, I think sometimes if you have like some shit going on in your life, that's like really like encompassing and like staking all of your thoughts. If, for example, I guess if you've had like I'm not necessarily like a traumatic event, but somewhat traumatic. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, but something that's currently feels like a lot. I think that can really lower your openness to experience. Yeah,
definitely. Like if you're feeling super depressed, like you're just so in yourself. You're not looking outwards. You ain't looking for no beauty, are you?
No, not at all. And then on the other side, sometimes you can be like so excited and so like fulfilled by life, but then you see something that's like on a normal day, it doesn't mean nothing to you, but like on that day, it's like, oh my God, like this is amazing. That like, and then when you go back and see it and you go and experience it again on another day, you're like, wow, this feels completely different to what it felt like initially, you know?
And just like the minute changes that can have, just like if it's a sunny day, how much that changes.
Oh my gosh.
On a sunny day, like you feel sunny and then like everything is sparkling and you're like, oh, life is so good.
Yeah.
Or if it's rainy and you feel like shit, like you're just like, ugh, everything's disgusting.
Do you know, I went to Southampton last month, and just as I was getting into Southampton, I got into a bit of traffic and I looked, there was a wall, this big wall on the motorway. I was looking at the wall, it's like these interesting patterns. And I was like, what are these patterns? Like, how are they, and I was looking at them and I was like, what the fuck is that? I was trying to figure out this whole time. And basically what it was, it was all the like dirt that was collected on the wall. So the wall was like a bit dark and like smoky. But then there was these like really perfect shapes, like these like semicircles and stuff. And then I realized basically like plants that are like almost like half dead that are getting blown from the wind, and they're just like, because they're still rooted, so they just do this and like they're just grazing the wall in the same place, and this whole wall was covered in these patterns. I was like, wow, that's actually amazing.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Just like, that was a very aesthetic experience.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Now I've learned like the term aesthetic experience. It's just like, okay, just like, or like people are telling me, I've started just asking people like, what's your most aesthetic experience you've ever had? Like, what's your most aesthetic?
What are you asking me?
Yeah.
What's the most aesthetic experience I've ever had?
And like, in terms of like, not just what you're seeing, but like, just like in terms of the senses, like you're overwhelmed by like all of the kind of like beauty, or like what the essay was saying, like talking about that kind of awe experience, something aesthetically that's triggered that in your life?
It would be hard to like nail it down to one, but one experience I can give you was I remember my first trip outside of Bulgaria was I was 12 or 13, and I went to LA, Las Vegas, and San Francisco. So from Bulgaria to there,
quite a shock to the
and LA was cool, whatever. Like it wasn't nothing too crazy.
A little bit.
But Las Vegas was mind blowing because like you drive for like 3-4 hours in a straight line through a desert. I mean, there's literally nothing. It's just sand dunes and like a couple petrol stations and like some settlements, like nothing. And then you enter this like it all starts like appearing like where am I? Like why is this here? But when we're there was obviously a lot of like sensory. There was 2 experiences from there. That was quite fun. So there's like a French bit where there's like the Eiffel Tower, and there's like the Venice Hotel, which is basically it's a hotel that you walk inside, but it's
I've heard about this actually.
But it's a hotel. So you walk inside, but it's like you're outside
because they've got the bridges and all.
So so it's really big. So there's buildings inside, so the walls are actually like balconies and stuff, and there's like people sat on the balconies and little restaurants, and there's like a little river with boats going like with like the what are they called, like the gondolas. And then the ceilings are sky, so the ceiling is like a blue sky with white clouds.
So it's not glass, it's like painted.
Yeah, painted with really nice lighting, so it looks real. And obviously I was a kid, so I was like, so anyway.
I mean, even if I saw that now, I think I'd be like boggled.
So yeah, but the thing is so big because you spend so long inside of it because there's like performances happening. It's Las Vegas, so it's like super entertaining anyway. And then we were in there, and I was in this like state of just like, it's like, wow, like what is this? And then I remember leaving, and we'd been in there for so long that it'd gone dark outside. So I walked outside and I was like, it's dark. Like I was like, what is happening to my life? And you see all the you go from this like French little paradise to this like Las Vegas like madness within the space of like a minute. It was like so overwhelming. All the like buildings are lit up and like cars and fucking like Elvis Presley's and like all these weird characters everywhere, and that was amazing. And then we went to watch the fountains on the Bellagio Hotel that were like
fountains. Oh
my gosh, like so crazy. I remember just like being so impressed that like water can feel so powerful.
Yeah.
Like I remember just like sitting on the edge, and these fountains are like huge. And obviously I'm sure they're not as big as I remember them to be because I was 12.
Like they are quite big though.
They're very big, but like obviously they have all the like music and it's like a full spectacle. But then they have like these few fountains that are like extra pressured ones. Yeah. So like they fire up so high, the whole ground vibrates. So like they all just go off like every once it goes like, and you feel the ground vibrate, and you're like yeah, it was insane. That was definitely like an awe experience.
Yeah,
just like,
I bet. Fucking hell. Vegas it's kind of built for that, isn't it? It's just like a sensory wonderland.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and it's non-stop as well.
Yeah, it
absolutely non-stop.
How did Vegas happen? Do you know?
Yeah, it was just a stop off place. It was in between like Salt Lake City and LA, I think, or somewhere else. But it was initially just a traveler's town where people would just stop off, like stay in a hotel. Obviously, gambling back in like cowboy days was quite big, so they were just like, it would be like a little gambling spot, and then one thing led to another, and then literally turned into Las Vegas. Yeah, it was just like a little town in the middle of the desert, which now it's just a big town in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like it's in Death Valley, like literally the hottest place in the world.
Yeah, because usually like settlements are built on like rivers or something.
Yeah, like where it makes sense.
That's how like trade happens, or like if you need to fucking drink something.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like Vegas is always the place, and you see in like apocalypse films where it's just like it's gone to shit. It would happen so quickly, like with the grid. If the grid went down, like
they'd be fucked. I have no idea. I mean, fucking LA struggles for water sometimes. I don't know how Las
I feel
Vegas.
like they've been in a drought for like 20 years. It rains like once a year.
I don't know. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
it's weird. But yeah, that was an experience that I definitely remember as a kid. I was like, wow.
Yeah, super aesthetic.
What about you? I'm sure you've had some time to think about it now.
Yeah, I have. There's loads. I remember being at a festival with my brother, and we went to see. Have you heard of the Arcadia Spider?
I don't think so, no.
So it's basically this big metal structure that's kind of built like a spider, and they have a DJ booth like hanging from the bottom of the spider.
Wow.
So I think Andy C was playing, and it was just like, and then they have lasers coming off all the arms. But like as the show kind of like reaches its climax, the top, they have dancers hanging off the arms, like aerial dancers hanging off the arms, and then they shoot like bursts of fire out of the top of the spider, and then fireworks come out of it. And I'm just there, just like,
so much going on.
Like, to start with, there's this giant metal spider, which you're like, that's cool. And then it's like this intense drum and bass music, which you're like, this is amazing. And then there's just like fire shooting out, and then there's firework, and there's dancers, and it's just like, whoa. It's like looking all around, and you're like, my God.
Yeah.
This is
insanity.
Like, just like that awe thing, like, this is just so fantastic. I feel like festivals are really built for aesthetic experiences, you know?
Yeah, while you're saying that, it's sort of like that whole thing sparked in my mind, but I was like, and not just festivals, like most things that we like outside of work that we pay money for.
Yeah.
Is that, you know? In one way or another. Just to go have like an aesthetic experience, like.
Well, we're super built for it. This is the thing. Like, there's this guy called Richard Prume who's kind of put out this theory of aesthetic coevolution, which is like, I had to read the paper for my oral exam. And it's just like such an interesting approach. And he's talking about how it's not just humans that are kind of like built and make aesthetic choices. Like a lot of birds, like
birds, because they do all the dances and like all the
and
like
the bowerbirds. You know, like he said that they make aesthetic seduction theatres. You know, like they're not nests; they're aesthetic seduction theatres.
No.
Have you seen what bowerbirds do?
It's like the way they clear the whole area and they're like,
and then they collect little piles of like bottle caps or like a certain kind of flower, and then
like magpies do that as well, right?
They just steal shiny stuff. Bowerbirds do something like,
well,
they like weave reeds and then they collect all these little piles. And then a female bowerbird, because there'll be a lot of different male bowerbird nests for them to choose from, and the female will come and kind of have a look and be like, and then like fly to the next one and be like, oh yeah, okay, I like that.
This one.
But like that's a choice they're making based on aesthetics. Like, what does that do other than it's like an aesthetic choice?
It is, because
like,
it doesn't necessarily mean the
so it's not just humans at all that do things aesthetically. And it's like he made an interesting point that like, I mean, Darwin talked about aesthetic mate choices, but it was kind of something that came up after natural selection, so it was kind of dismissed. So it's something that's kind of like very obvious, but you just we don't really think about it. We think, oh, natural selection, that's what we've got. But then it's a bit more complicated because like there's a lot of aesthetic choice making and evolution that happens. Like bird songs evolve. They did this study where if you play like bird songs that are a bit more old to birds in the same like community you recorded them, they don't respond effectively as strongly to songs that are older. And like a bird that kind of has like a something that's kind of strange in its voice, like that will then change the way that all of the birds sing because they kind of like evolve together. Does that make sense? I don't know if I explained that very well.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, birds are incredible. Like
birds are super cool.
Yeah. And I can see how old people get into bird watching. Yeah. That's such a fun little.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting area of study, actually.
It's fascinating, and it's quite new.
So you said Darwin talked about it.
Aesthetic, yeah. In talking about in mate choices and how that's aesthetic, he kind of came up with it originally.
Oh, no way.
But then it was just like, I think it was kind of just like, yeah, whatever. Nobody really took it seriously. I mean, Richard Prume made an interesting point that he actually thinks that like a lot of the kind of idea of aesthetic coevolution has been ignored because of like misogyny. He was like, yeah, I find it very, like other scientists of that time, and like when was it, like, I mean, I don't even know when it was, a long time ago.
I don't know what
the idea that like women or like female animals could be involved in the way that evolution happens was just like, no way. And it's just like hilarious when you think about that now. You're like, okay. I mean, I don't know how much he like really believes that. I just read it in an article that he'd done, but I was like, yeah, I mean, because with the like aesthetic mate choices in nature, it's usually the female that makes those choices.
Makes the choices, yeah.
So it's like, oh, girls aren't responsible for it. And most of what we've explored in evolution, especially with humans, it's like how the male body has evolved. Don't really look at like why and how the female body evolved.
Yeah, we don't actually.
No.
Well, I'm sure some people do, but in the general knowledge, it's not.
No, I don't know anything about it. I mean, I read one book, but then I Googled it afterwards and it was like, oh, that's like completely dismissed as science. And I was like, oh, okay. It's called The Descent of Woman rather than The Descent of Man by Darwin.
Yeah.
But apparently it's all defunct science. So
it's all defunct science, yeah.
You know, when you read a book and you're like, that makes so much sense. And then it's like, oh, nobody buys into that. And you're like, oh, fuck. It's all just in my brain now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's...
it all shifts, though, eventually. Yeah. Come back in fashion.
Yeah, and it's all like... It's all knowledge that if you have critical skills where... Because I think all information can be good if you know how to like balance it with like not just take it as like face value, you know. But
that gets harder and harder.
It gets harder and harder, but also the more you know as well, the more you can sort of reason it.
Yeah, that's a good thing about our course. We're kind of, when we're reading all of these like academic papers, and obviously like they're peer reviewed, like proper like scientific journals. And then like in our lectures, we're kind of really encouraged to like pick them apart. It's like, okay, so what are the limitations of this study? Or like, what do you not think was very good about this study? And it's kind of like, okay, so like,
even though it's peer reviewed, like,
even though it's like, yeah, this is like gold standard, well, like very high level published science. It's like, okay, what's wrong with this?
Yeah, you're still encouraged to like question it.
Yeah. Or like,
great.
How have they failed in their study, or what is the limit? Like, what about their sample size? You know, like, did they do enough of that, or like, could there be another explanation?
That's great, because no information should be sacred, you know.
No, and like, this is the thing that is really interesting about science is people are like, you always find this conversation when you're kind of having the atheist debate, and they're like, oh well, no, I believe in science. You know, like I believe in facts, and it's like, oh well. I don't think you really understand what that means. Yeah. Science is literally constantly shifting. It's all a case of like theories, and can we prove? Like the Big Bang Theory is a very interesting theory.
Yeah.
You literally can never prove it. You know, it's like you kind of science shifts and like something new comes out, and then the whole thing is. But it's kind of a bit populist, isn't it? It's like the peer review process is like, yeah, we think you've done this well. Like we agree with you, cool. But like somebody can have like a wild idea that's like. But if people don't really like, yeah, maybe not.
It is populist, 100%.
Yeah.
But then also, I guess these ideas just naturally form through. I guess you know, like us as humans, we keep certain I guess not measures, but we keep the society around us to a certain standard. Maybe not as individuals, but as groups. So I feel like when that's I don't know. I guess I'm just describing populism, but yeah. But I do find it interesting, like when that sort of like subject comes up, just in general with populism, because it in a sense is good, but in another sense is also a flaw. You know, because it's good to have these like. I guess like base level standard of like, okay, this is probably good, and we can all agree on it, because there's too many things there's too many things to think about on an individual basis.
There's so many things to argue about, isn't there?
Yeah. Like on an individual basis, you just can't comprehend. There's too many areas of study, too many areas of like debate and whatever. So whenever something, you know, is is in the public eye as generally good, people see it as that, but they but then again, at the same time, it's a flaw because it might actually not be at all. It might not be at all, but I don't know. I'm not sure what point I'm trying to prove, but just like speaking,
it's weird, isn't it? Because like I feel like we're not really encouraged to think critically about things. We're kind of encouraged to be like, yeah, this is what we're presenting you with, and you need to accept that. And you're like, and if you think critically, then it kind of can just cause a lot of friction for you. But I mean, I think it's something that we should all be questioning things all the time. But
and then for the longest time, you know, all of that information was sort of just given to us without much question from like governments and whatever. But now the floodgates have opened with like, I guess it started off with printing and paper, and then now it's internet. The floodgates have completely opened in terms of information, where it's not as state controlled as it used to be. No,
I mean they're trying, aren't they? But
that's what I mean. Yeah, it's like they're really trying.
Yeah, I mean the internet is really threatening, and this is why I think maybe we're seeing a lot more kind of like authoritarian ideals kind of being kind of emerging again, because they're kind of panicking. It's like, fuck, people can educate themselves with an internet connection. You don't need to like go to university, and you can find out limitless information on the internet, and that is kind of a threat to like
current systems.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's like, oh, we can like research ways on the internet to like how to make things better for everybody, and then everyone kind of is a bit more. It's easy when everybody's really stupid and you just tell them like, this is what's happening, and they're like, okay, you know better. Whereas people have kind of access to information, so you can question things.
You can question things, yeah. It's a weird I don't know. I think it's interesting how we look at propaganda as like a thing of the past. But
no way.
It's
just so much more clever now.
They've had to work hard.
Yeah,
they've had to work hard. Where you know, it's very like it's like it's very weird. For example, how like for like on the Labour side of things, or Democrat on the left side of the spectrum, where it's, you know, it's sort of been regarded as like the open mind, you know, like open mind side of society, and how that's sort of been generally not the case over the last few years, where you know, we've had to sort of like I guess we have to sort of like shift our not as a shift our perspective, but like how you're saying, like propaganda has become so much smarter now. They're like, media outlets are learning how to target specific groups and how to like give them the type of information that they're like, yeah, this is a type of information that I know is right, or I know is true, or this information makes confirms my truth, or whatever.
With social media as well, like the way that it kind of operates in like putting people in little bubbles and then feeding them information where it's just like cyclical. And I mean, that's why we're seeing so much polarization, isn't it? Because they kind of like will feed some people that agree with something, and it's like you can kind of encourage extremism on either side of the political spectrum by being like, this is the issue. And then because it's this like this idea of like niching that happens on the internet, where like people get put in these little niches, and then there's like a breakdown of like wider communication that you would find in real life.
Yeah.
So it is clever, like, because you can also do like all these weird like Twitter bots and Facebook bots that happen that just kind of like spam with comments or like links, and then
was I telling you about the weird Facebook thing?
Which one?
Which one? Well, basically, when they found out that, like, you know, like there was also like these like Russian troll farms and like, you know, like these fake accounts and stuff.
Yeah.
And when Facebook was sort of losing popularity a few years ago, they sort of made like this change in its system where with groups, basically, it was, you know, like how it was back in the day. If someone invited you to a group, you could accept or decline, and that would be it. You know, that was it. But then they changed this thing where if someone invited you to a group on Facebook, and they basically realized that, you know, groups is one of the things in Facebook that was really flourishing. That was the one place where people were still using a lot, like lots of commenting and interactions, whatever activity. People just kept coming back to Facebook because of the groups. So basically, they wanted to really capitalize on that. So what they did was they made this like little change. Whereas basically, if say I invite you to a group, you don't accept or decline, but now you might see one or two of the posts from my group on your timeline. My dad's calling. Not answer.
Not answer.
I'll call him back. Sorry. Very unprofessional.
No, not at all.
I'm joking. So yeah, they made this small change where if I invite you to a group,
Yeah.
you might see one or two of the posts from my group on your timeline, which, okay, fine. But as soon as you click one of those posts, you automatically accept my invite to enter the group. So
That's tricky,
without even you realizing. So obviously people capitalize on that big time. And you could, because what you can do is you can just invite 100,000 people, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then all of a sudden they'll see like a couple of posts on their timeline, and like, so like 20% of the people just click randomly on those posts, like, oh, what's this post? Because
Or it's something that they disagree with, and then
no, of course, yeah, exactly. Disagree, agree,
Or they're like,
just interact.
passive like.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, then you enter the group.
I didn't know about that. No.
Yeah. So I mean, it goes really deep. So they found out recently that they done a study, and with lots of different subgenres of groups. So, for example, in religion and specifically Christianity, there's massive groups on Facebook on Christianity, and they found out that out of the top 20 Facebook groups that were, you know, all about Christianity, 19 of the top 20, 19 were all made by like troll farms.
Really?
Yeah. So they were fake, like someone fake pretending to be real made these groups that basically invited like millions and millions and millions of people.
And do they know like what the goal was with that?
Well, so the whole thing with troll farms and all this stuff is to cause distress in society, right? So
Okay.
so all it is like, for example, like they'll target, like with Christians, they tend to be quite conservative, right? So they'll just feed the conservative party like stuff about, basically to polarize society. So they'll just give stuff about like, oh, the snowflake generation is doing this again, or you know what I mean. As well as obviously a post that will keep people engaged, but then they'll throw in like the odd post that would like infuriate them just a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people are infuriated on the internet.
A lot, and like the thing is, that's the one thing on Facebook. Like, I went on it today, like when like all the Ukraine stuff's happening, to see like what the Bulgarian people are saying. So it's like people just get so involved.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter for me is like the angry place. Like, I've really had to try hard to like tailor my Twitter so it's not just like people shouting and getting really like, I think that short format, it's a hot take, you know, you've got to have a hot take, and like, it's just not conducive to like good communication at all. I don't know.
Yeah, Twitter. I mean, I don't know. There's so much policing now happening on these platforms as well, where
What, like censorship
and people getting deplatformed for whatever reason. Where I think we're probably on the brink of new means of social media. I think
we're due it. I think like we haven't had a new one.
We're TikTok, but that was sort of a different.
TikTok's a bit of a worry as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just have to. I did a little bit of TikTok, and I was like, whoa, I cannot cannot have like good social media boundaries with this thing, because it's just like
it's so good.
It's so good, and you just watch it for hours, and you're like, oh, I'll do like half an hour of TikTok, and then like it's 4 a.m. and you're like, oh my god,
yeah.
And then I can't sleep if I've been on TikTok.
Yeah, you're so like.
So it's like so like stimulating.
But that must be quite an interesting like study within what you're studying, like aesthetic experiences within like 10-second videos.
Yeah.
You know, because those videos will like they give you a very unique aesthetic experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really screwing up attention spans. Like across the board, people's attention spans are getting really messed up.
You know, in China, they basically banned it. They didn't ban it, but they're
allowed if you're under 18, you're allowed 2 hours a day, and it's mostly educational.
Yeah. So they
Which
tailor.
Sounds great, actually.
Yeah, they tailor it. So, and you're also not allowed to use it after like 10 p.m. or something.
Yeah.
So.
But it's weird how it works, isn't it? Like I just get shown so many babies.
Oh, really?
On TikTok, it's all just babies. I'm just like, it's clever. I don't know what kind of AI they're using, but like they track how much you watch a video and just give you more of that. So it's kind of just weird, isn't it?
It gives you
because you're kind of unconscious to it. You're just like engaged more with some things, and it picks up on that, and that's kind of crazy. Like behavioral data that is being gathered.
Yeah, big time.
It's kind of like fascinating and amazing, but terrifying. You know, like that. What is going to happen with all of that, like behavioral data? It's very It'd be cool to see. I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean now there's with the rise of like crypto NFT, whatever, that whole world, and sort of decentralized things in general. There's been a couple of like alternatives that have been popping up. So like decentralized social medias and video platforms and stuff like that.
What do you mean, like decentralized?
So like without any policing, without any like. Yeah, well, I don't know the span of it, but I keep hearing about a couple that people have joined certain platforms on the internet where, yeah, they're necessarily decentralized without anyone on top looking down on the information, because on one side it's like, I guess like the popular argument with that is when you don't have anyone policing, one of the strongest government tools whenever they're trying to persuade public opinion is to use terrorism as a sort of as a term. You know, they wrap it up in a package and they say, this is terrorism.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not. They're trying to just gather more data on you, and they're trying to like, you know, breach your privacy and breach your
limit your freedom.
Yeah. But yeah, I saw like a really good meme like ages ago. I saved it on my computer. But yeah, it's like, yeah, how would you like your policy or like gift wrapped, like terrorism or something else? It was really good. But I don't know what the future holds with social media, but it's not.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Wild West out there, isn't it? We're just like, not really sure if that's...
Because the thing is, everyone has that, right? Basically, everyone that's on like, Instagram and Twitter is like has mixed feelings about it. Everybody, even the people that are really involved and hate it and like whatever, everybody's has mixed feelings about social media.
Yeah.
So at some point, I'm sure there will be a big change in how things are, how it's done, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It'd be quite nice to have something new, though. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like how old's Instagram? Like maybe like 15 now. Like apart from, I mean, TikTok, it's clever, but then it's kind of like ruined YouTube. Because now it's all just like shorts. It's like everything is kind of like merging and trying to be the same. They're like, oh, they're doing something good.
So
Let's
we have
become
to do it.
like
It was
that.
like stories.
Rather than, like, yeah, it was like
I
and
want-
actually I do love stories now, but that was Snapchat.
Snapchat came in the game and like completely like everybody was like,
Yeah. But it's like, why can't you just like do what you do and then make that better rather than like smashing down these like small little tech startups and then just like absorbing them like a big
because there's money to be made.
fucking
There is money.
capitalism.
There's money to be made.
They have money.
Yeah. Ah,
Money.
man, whatever.
I know.
It's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It is. How are you feeling about photography nowadays? Are you thinking about it much? You've done a whole degree in it. You're a great
Yeah.
photographer, in my opinion.
Thank you. I
But-
appreciate that.
But
It's weird. My relationship with photography like confuses me a lot. Like, I go through bursts where I'm just like, yep, cool, I'm gonna
That's all I
take
wanna
some
do.
pictures. But or like, yeah, I think I could like be successful at that. But then like there's a side of me that's like so sensitive. It's like obviously like a lot of the photos that I make like explore like very kind of like emotional personal aspects. Like a lot of the self-portrait stuff is like me working through like really like big stuff. But then there's kind of like when you're doing something like that, you kind of then don't want to like explain what the project is. You know, it's like, oh, there's a picture of me that's kind of like looks a bit like airy fairy, but then it's like, okay, so actually the backstory to that is really vulnerable and tense, which I don't really want to share. So then it's kind of like monetizing. How do you do that? So it's tricky. I don't know. I love taking pictures and I think I always will. Whether or not I'll ever successfully like monetize that
yeah.
is another matter. I'm constantly confused about it. Interesting learning about creativity and like creative processes. Because a lot of the time I'm like, you know, when you kind of get all inspired and you have loads of ideas and then you do some research and then you feel like you hit a wall. Like actually learning about the creative process is like, that's meant to happen. And then you like have an aha moment and then you create something. Whereas like for me, when I would hit that kind of like wall of being like, oh, now I've just got to like think about it, I'd think it was just like gone. Whereas like understanding more about the creative process, I'm kind of excited to kind of implement that in my process a bit. But we'll see. I don't know. Go through phases with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, it's tricky.
I want to ask you, I feel like you're quite, you know, you sort of grew up and matured quite early, sort of by force of nature, and you know had to deal with a lot of stuff growing up very early, and you've been sort of quite good at understanding trauma and how that works in the body and mind and everything around. What do you think are like sort of like the biggest misconceptions about trauma in populace in the whatever?
That like only a fraction of people are traumatized. Like I genuinely feel like 90% of us experience trauma and like have to then deal with the consequences of that. Like it's so normal. This is what's weird about it. Like mine is quite easy because it's like very like on the cover of my life. You can't kind of be like, because obviously your inclination if you've experienced trauma is to like hide that because it makes you kind of like faulty in a way. Whereas I think kind of this new wave of stuff that's happening where people are really embracing like talking about trauma and like we all go through it. Like I don't know a single person in my life that's not traumatized in some way. but that's like a natural consequence of life. So we just need to be engaging in like, okay, so how do you move through that? Like, how do you integrate that into your, like, yeah, we all are going to experience trauma in our life. And then how do we move through that? I think that that's important. And I think that there's a big misconception around like the idea that depression is a chemical imbalance is something that really bugs me. Like, depression is usually like a direct consequence of something that's going on in somebody's life. Which is like, by handing out some pills isn't solving the problems in the life. Does that make sense?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, depression seems to be extremely complicated.
Super complicated, yeah. I don't claim to understand
Yeah.
at all, but...
Do you think there's a bit of a barrier in language within trauma? Because basically what I'm trying to say, I feel like there's certain trauma that can be very traumatizing and certain traumas that are nowhere near as much, but they're classed under the same objectively, but I guess
subjectively, like, so what I've been through versus what somebody, I don't know, like, I feel like people judge it subjectively. Like, people judge my trauma as like, whoa, fuck, you've had it real bad. Whereas like in my head, I'm like, well, in a lot of ways I was very lucky, it wasn't all bad. There's like a lot of lessons to be learned. Like there's like worse, like from the outside, there's worse things that can happen. Absolutely. Like, I mean, I think things with like child abuse is so complicated and so awful that is like some of the worst. But then like experiencing violence, and there's so many different areas of trauma, but then what is important is how it's subjectively affected somebody. So like somebody could just like, their parents just do not pay attention to them, they like, then they don't engage with them emotionally, they don't really pay any, like, they're just not interested. Like, that can be so traumatizing. That could be more traumatizing potentially like than a death of a parent. Just like never being seen as a human being as you grow up, that, like, from the outside, somebody's got like wealthy parents, but then they're like, that could be a much more traumatizing way to grow up rather than like growing up in a family where there's a parental death but there's a lot of love. Does that make sense? Like, everything looks different from the outside.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
How things affect you subjectively is like the measure of what's traumatizing. I don't think we can decide. Well, I mean, yeah, obviously that's a spectrum, but it's a very individual experience.
Yeah.
I don't know if I garbled that up a bit.
No, you didn't. Not at all. Do you think sometimes this is almost going back to the psychogenesis thing? Do you think trauma can be manifested in, or rather made worse? Say, for example, like I tell you something that I don't, like, say something bad happened in my life, but it wasn't like, I didn't feel like it was that horrific, but was saying something.
Yeah.
And then your response was like, oh my gosh, like, can't believe that happened to you. That must have been like the worst thing ever, blah, 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 blah. And you basically like, I guess, like spew out all these things that in theory sound like what should have happened in terms of like, well, you must have felt so bad, that must have really traumatized you, that must have really scarred you in a way. And then I'm, in my head, I'm starting to think like, oh my God, maybe, yeah. maybe I'm really traumatized. Maybe this and maybe that. Yeah. And that manifestation makes it worse, and my memory sort of like scrambles it in a little package and worsens it in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's probably all part of the process. Like, I think with trauma, there's like you always want to deny it. You want to be like, no, I'm not traumatized, because there's something about being like traumatized that is like, you don't.
It's vulnerable.
Yeah, you don't want to be traumatized. You don't want to like claim that.
No.
But I think you kind of have to claim. You've got to claim your trauma and face your trauma and look in the body and find the trauma and then like face it head on and heal it. Because I also like that book that I read that I bang on about all the time.
Mind and Body. What's it called?
The Body Keeps the Score.
The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, Dr. What's he called? Vessel van der Kolk. You can heal trauma. And I was like, in my understanding of it was like some things are super fucked up and you're screwed. But then I read that book and I was like, oh, there's hope, even in like the darkest cases. And like, that's all you need is a bit of hope. Like it's then also like lots of hard work. But I think that's what you describing is like, it's probably something that you have to do and face and then be like, yeah, okay. I've got to maybe claim that to then move through it.
Yeah, maybe. I guess that's not necessarily the point I was trying to make, but it was.
Really, what do you mean?
I guess it was like can I guess at a base level, can trauma or a bad experience become trauma because you got convinced by it by someone else, basically?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. No, it's someone said this to me recently. I've just been thinking about it.
What, they said that you traumatized?
No, not to me. Not that I'm traumatized, but this exact example was like, how a certain situation, if communicated in the wrong way, can worsen in that sense. Can feel like it was a traumatizing experience because also like our memories.
Yeah.
Our memories are also complicated and they can sort of change as well.
Yeah.
And not just change in like what we remember, but what emotion we attach to the memories as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really tricky, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
I think, communication is key. But then also as somebody, like when you start talking about it to people that haven't experienced the same things, you're like, you do the opposite where you're like, you can kind of just like tell people too much if you're like, oh, I'm going to be really open. And then you're like, ooh, I shouldn't have done that. Because like people's reactions can be like really strong. And you're like, oh, like that's just something that's like my life, which is just very normal to me. But then people can have really strong emotional reactions and you worry that like by telling people some of your stuff, you're actually traumatizing them.
You're traumatizing them.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. I forget that I maybe like can handle this stuff as like normal.
Yeah, because it's just your life.
It's just life, you know?
Yeah. What sort of about this book, Body Keeps a Score? What sort of like the thing that really stuck with you from it? Like, is there anything specific where it was like?
There's loads of it, honestly, that is so good because it's a lot of the techniques are really simple, and so there was one example where they kind of working with theatre. So there's stuff about yoga, which is like a kind of, we know that yoga is amazing, but then there's all this now through this book, there's all this evidence of how it's amazing for like reintegrating people with trauma. You kind of quite often like disassociate from the body, but by using yoga, you can really get back into the body and kind of like rebuild that connection, which is essential. But the theatre one is really interesting. They kind of work with like really inner city kids or like veterans. But with the veterans one, I think they get them to recite like Greek tragedies. And like, because obviously how you tell your story is really important. And it's like this, because with certain elements of trauma, you get stuck. It's not like it doesn't integrate into the like narrative part of your brain. You're kind of like, you relive that moment, especially with like PTSD, you know, you relive that moment as if it's happening there and then repeatedly. Whereas if you can integrate it into the brain, like into the like the memory centers and the narrative understanding, like that's a huge part of integrating it and then being able to move through it. But by using like reciting theatre, because you're not having to tell your own story, you're kind of like just putting yourself into this narrative, but especially with veterans and the Greek tragedies are all about war and they're all of these emotions that they're expressing. So it's kind of been a really interesting technique of how to move people through their own stuff by using like the vessel of kind of
a tragedy.
Yeah, like and theatre, like standing up and just expressing something, but then through that you can have a really emotional experience, which is your own emotional experience, but kind of like disguised
Or something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's tricky. I didn't explain it very well.
No. That's. Yeah, in a way, I guess that makes sense, and especially for veterans, and you connected with war, and you connected with this theatrical experience.
Mm-hmm.
I can see how that can be.
Have you read it?
No, I still haven't read it. No.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
I do that about everybody. I
know.
have like a certain book that I'm just like pushing at all times.
That's the one.
Yeah, that was the one like last year.
What's the one this year?
Well, there was Braiding Sweetgrass, which I don't know if I told you about.
Don't think so.
It's just a fucking gorgeous book. It was the biologist who's also a Native American, and it's all about kind of like, it's just so beautiful. She's like a poet, the way she writes. And it's all about like plant origin stories in like, it's been a while since I've read it. I actually moved on to a new one that Axel's sister gave me called Period Power, which is all about the menstrual cycle and like understanding the whole menstrual cycle.
Actually, just how it works and what it is.
Yeah, and like it's kind of amazing that I'm 28 and I don't know this.
What are you... Actually, yeah, please explain. Because
I mean, the way that I haven't finished it, but the way that the writer explains it is like, over the course of your menstrual cycle, you go through like like different seasons. So like when you're on your period, you're in your winter. And then when you're ovulating, that's your summer, and then, but it's all about the different hormones that are kind of like rising at different parts of your cycle. So obviously when you finish your periods, your estrogen starts to rise, which is your kind of like happy hormone, which like makes you want to go out in the world and feel good. And it's like trying to get you to have sex so that you reproduce. But then after you ovulate, then you have a lot of proestrogen, which is like what makes you like really tired and you want to kind of like stay home and eat. And it's just like, oh yeah, of course that there's like a hormonal cycle, but just having it explained in really simple terms and using this metaphor of seasons was just like, oh, that's
nice.
So cool.
Yeah.
And then when you actually track it, then you can like predict it. And you're like, okay, so like maybe like day 21, I'm not going to want to go out and do anything. Or like maybe I should not put like a job interview on that day, It's just really interesting. I was like, I didn't know this.
No. So what in autumn? What's in autumn?
Yeah, autumn is like, you don't want to do shit.
You don't want to do shit.
You're
Spring.
Lazy. Spring, you should, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good time to start new things.
Good, it is, yeah.
Do some exercise.
Yeah. Have you started your running?
No.
I know you haven't. No, that was more of a, you should have started your running.
I have started Kui Yong though.
Kui Yong. What's Kui?
Kui Gong? Kui Yong? I don't know.
Kui Gong.
Yeah. So it's like, you've never heard of it?
Is that like yoga with Tibetan bowls?
No, it's like a Chinese, it's like Tai Chi, but with more like bashing.
Oh yeah.
So it's about moving energy through the body.
Nice.
So you kind of like do lots of shaking or like you bash different parts of your body, and it's all about like moving your chi around your body. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Like honestly, it just makes you laugh so much because you're there just like in the living room like bashing yourself and shaking, and it's just like
that sounds fun.
It just lifts your mood so much. And then it's like, once you've done that, you're like, yeah, cool. Now I want to go for like a half an hour walk. I'm like,
nice.
It gets you going.
How long did it last? Is that like
you
10,
can do like
10, 15
minute ones or longer. I'm trying to get Axel to do like the partners one with me, where you like do the energy together.
Imagine him just.
Yeah. He loved it when I did it, when he did the like just the mood lifter one.
Yeah.
But I want to do the whole like, let's like channel energy balls together.
That sounds great.
It's really fun.
That sounds really great. Yeah.
It makes me. It's just puts you in such a good mood. If you're feeling a bit shit mood, then it's like, yeah, I'll do 15 minutes. You've always got 15 minutes.
Always got 15 minutes.
And then at the end of it, you're just literally like grinning. It's cute.
Yeah, I think that's.
But no, the running still needs to come.
Yeah, you and Ramon.
Me and Ramon.
Yeah, you and Ramon. Little. Yeah, I don't know how, if I see that happening. I would love to just like.
I would love that. In my head.
It's about to be spring.
I know. I'm about to be 28. It's time to run.
It's time to run.
It's time to stop smoking and run.
Yeah. That's a great combination of things.
Yeah. But somebody, when somebody tells you something and you're like, okay, I'm just going to hold on to that. Somebody was telling me that if you stop smoking and start running at the same time, you do loads of damage to your lungs.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, well, like I can't start running until I stop smoking.
And
then I can't stop smoking
it's
because I'm addicted to it.
Bullshit.
I don't know.
Whatever. Just exercise.
Not
and do you know what it is? I've taken a completely sort of new approach to it, or with exercise over the last sort of like year or so, where I used to be quite obsessed with like programs and whatever, like 3-month programs, 6-month programs and stuff like that, which, you know, can be good, but can seem quite daunting and quite like...
Yeah, I mean, I can't even do like a 3-day exercise program.
It can all seem like quite daunting and just intimidating. But now I just do what I enjoy. I just whatever I feel like doing on the day. You know, the hardest bit is just going to the gym. But the thing is, like, once I've started going and I've realized that it doesn't have to be intimidating. I can just be there for 20 minutes, just do a little run, stretch, lift some weights. Obviously, like with some intent, you know, like, oh, maybe I'll do like lower body or upper body or whatever.
But
like,
from like more intuitive.
More intuitive, like way more intuitive, because it's not like, I used to be quite, you know, quite like the idea of like peak performance.
Yeah, you got really, who's that, Dave Goggins guy?
Yeah. Not even that, like before that, when I was younger, like really I was like, how...
I think that's a really like normal thing with athletes, isn't it? It's like, if you're athletic, you need to be like the best possible version of athletic that you can be.
Yeah. But
like
now it's...
extremes, you're either like not sporty or you're super sporty.
But it's, now I look at it from just like a longevity type of thing, where it's like, it's just something that I just want to be able to enjoy for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So...
You need to teach me.
Yeah.
How do you get that?
You just have to find stuff that you enjoy. Exercising. And there's loads out there.
Yeah, there are actually.
There's loads of stuff that's like just fun to do, you know. You just need to find the space, and also sometimes just like let go of certain ideas of yourself and ideas of what other people have with you, and also what other, and I think a lot of people that like, you know, I mean, this is quite a cliche thing to say, but people just sometimes don't like going to the gym because they don't like people looking at them working out. But then everyone that goes to the gym knows that, like,
I get that. Like, that's something that really, like, I used to love going to yoga classes when I lived up north, because I'd go to this like yoga class with like loads of little old ladies, or just like people of all different bodies and different ages. And then kind of coming to London, and it just felt like every yoga class is just like super tall,
yummy
skinny, and you're just like, I don't feel comfortable. Or like everyone's really good, and you're just like, oh, I can't do that one. Or I don't know, it felt
a lot more intimidating,
less inclusive, and more intimidating, and just like, oh, I feel out of place. I don't like it. I'm not going to ever go again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's
one bad yoga teacher can like put you off so easily. I remember we went to yoga class once, and like this yoga teacher like stopped the entire class to basically like just tell somebody off for having a drink of water. Like, it was, I think, this woman who, she was like a little bit overweight, and she was like, she just like stopped to have a drink of water. And the teacher like stopped the entire class to be like, actually, it's like really not good for you to drink water. You should only drink water or after or. And it was just like, I was just standing there like, this is so unnecessary and uncomfortable and horrible. Like, you're just making us all look at this person who clearly doesn't
want to be looked at
or like berated, and like, seriously, is it that much of a deal if she like has a sip of water during yoga? It was just like, it felt so awful. I was like, I am never, ever coming here again.
Yeah, it just felt
like,
awkward.
That's not what yoga's about. It's awful.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Isn't it? It's just nasty.
It is. Yeah. Well, it's just The thing is, like, the thing is, like, it really, you have to like read your audience in it, because that you can do that if you're like a specialized yoga class where, you know, like, it's serious. Like, or
this was like at the local gym.
Exactly. Yeah. If it's just like, you know, like a bunch of people.
Introductory yoga class.
I don't know. No one gives a fuck. You know what I mean?
Some people are just like
weirdos, but also just like people that just can't read their audience and like get a bit too obsessed with it.
Yeah,
which is fine. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. So how long is this course? Up until?
So I'm doing it part-time, so it's until next September.
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. I'm so glad I did it part-time because I couldn't have, it feels like full-time.
Yeah.
The first term was like so teaching heavy. And like even this term is meant to have calmed down. But like, it's just a lot to learn.
Yeah, it's
great, but
it sounds like it.
Yeah.
But it's great. I'm really glad you're doing it. You seem really happy about it.
Me too. I just love learning.
Have you thought about much like after it? It's fine. Don't need to.
No, everyone keeps asking me that. Like, oh wow, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, really don't know. Like, I might do a PhD.
Just keep going.
Just
and
like,
another PhD.
Yeah, or like I don't know. I think once you kind of get into this bit of, especially with science, it's kind of like cool. Like, you do an undergrad and then you do a master's, but like a master's doesn't really mean anything. You kind of then have to do a PhD before anyone will take you seriously. Or like to get a lot of jobs, entry level jobs is like they'll fund you to do your PhD. So I might do that, but I don't know.
A lot of time to think about it still.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Very
interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I think actually potentially could be quite a useful area of study in terms of like actually finding jobs, because again the whole thing is so broad in terms of like it's just all about experiences. And if you can teach a company, like, I think companies will pay good money for someone to come and like teach them.
Well, you can actually work in advertising as like a scientist in residence, where they like you explain to them like how to manipulate people's psychology.
Or just like how to put on a good show.
Yeah,
from like a scientific
what do people respond to.
Yeah.
There's some interesting stuff happening with like architecture and like how you can design kind of architectural spaces in a really with the aesthetics really in mind. They're using it a lot in kind of like wellness centers or like rehab centers, and everything is kind of like curved and it's got like real natural forms, which like has like an amazing effect on people's like how they interact with the space. It's like much more, it feels a lot better to be in, which is kind of wild that we don't think about that when we're kind of building stuff anyway.
I think good architects probably do.
Yeah, I've been watching this show actually on Netflix, and it's called Your Home Made Perfect. And it's all about these homes that are like just like built really weird, and they have these two architects come in and they like pitch them what their vision and show them it in VR. And it's so cool how they like.
I've seen something similar to that. I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but yeah, I've seen when architects go and like have like a VR version.
I got so addicted. I watched I think all of it this week.
Yeah.
So cool. Like all these houses are like all like confusing, and people's lives are just terrible living in them. And then these architects just like come in and redo it, and they're like, oh, wow. And it makes their lives better.
Feng shui.
Yeah. Feng shui.
Feng shui. Get a feng shui going.
Yeah, man.
Sweet. I quite happily leave it here, you know?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Get ready.
Yeah, exactly. They've got a big night going on.
Gotta go dancing.
Go dancing. I'm very excited for it.
Me too.
And also I want to have you on here many more times.
Really? Okay. Fair enough.
Definitely. Yeah. We'll have more, because this is just one area.
This is the nervous one. This is one where I'm like,
not even,
what am I saying?
Yeah, not even. I feel like it was really good. I think it was probably so far the most concentrated podcast. Like we covered basically one or two subjects. You know what I mean?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Which I feel like that's a good way to good way to have it, because normally
we have conversations where like
we chat about
tangent
for 4 hours and we're like out of it and we end.
It's like 4 a.m. It's like, okay, I just don't know what I'm saying at this point.
Yeah, time to go.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
that was fun.
That was a nice one.
Yeah.
Short and sweet.
An
hour and 15, I think, or something like that. Yeah, about that.
Cool. Yeah, that's got... What time is it? Yeah, perfect, because we want to be back by 4.
Lovely.
Sweet. Thanks for having me on.
It's been a pleasure. I love having you as a friend. You're one of the closest ones.
Yeah.
I want to keep you close at my heart.
Love you, babes.
Love you too. I'll send it here. Bye.